You know, great speakers don't fail because they can't present. More often than not, they fail because they can't build a business. On today's show, we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to make a living as a professional speaker, from expectations to marketing, pricing, sustainability. And we've got someone who walked away from a high six-figure career, bet on himself, and learned how to turn his expertise into income. You ready? Let's go. Today's guest, Chris Johnson, went from director of health and fitness at a Michigan Health Club to become a professional speaker. He jumped in and promptly saw his salary cut in half his first year and then take off. He is a master of transitions as he has moved 90% of his revenue to online sales. And I'm going to let him take it from here because he'll do a much better job than me. So, Chris, the floor is yours. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, thank Rob. You and I met, a handful of years ago at a conference with Invesco, but no,
Right.
I'm happy to be here today. But yeah, you and I talked a little bit about, a lot of people are interested in the speaking presentation, but like many people in my world, like in personal training or whatever, it's just hard to make a living. So back in the day, I kind of introduced myself this way, but I was raised by wolves, very similar to you. I'm 68 years old, been doing this 40 plus
Hey,
years.
hey, 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 we have to throw age out here? Who gave you permission? Who gave you permission? Keep
So,
going.
so back in the day, I kind of talk about being raised by wolves. I grew up on beefaroni and SpaghettiOs and bologna sandwiches, and I had psoriasis and eczema, I had digestive health issues. Because I want the audience to know that I'm not bulletproof. I have all these challenges back in the day. I worked at Frito-Lay, I worked at Butternut Bread, I was in the grocery stores for 8 years. But then over time, I decided this is not what I want to do, and I went back to grad school, got into exercise physiology, and worked at one of the largest health clubs in the world, the Michigan Athletic Club. And had one of the largest personal training programs in the world. And I started speaking to members. That led into corporations. And as you mentioned, I left this very high paying job back in the early 2000s to really decide that, you know what, I want to go do this. And again, I learned along the way, like I had a lot of reps speaking, but eventually I had to decide that, hey, babe, I'm telling my wife, been married 43 years. I want to go do this full time. So I hired a branding specialist, Dick Brusso from NSA. Um, and I learned a little bit about, okay, how do I start this journey? So I developed my business. I opened in 2006 called On Target Living based on our food target. And then in 2007, as you mentioned, I went out and I went out and basically my salary was cut in half, but I kind of led into that. I wasn't like I just jumped in. I kind of slowly did that. I was still doing some personal training on the side, but I quit my full-time management position and I left. And so that was the beginning. And then I slowly started speaking more and more and getting reps. And then eventually, the business started to take off and going into this full time. So that's really the speaking world for me is how it all began.
Yeah. And I'm 31 shows in now, and I haven't talked about money yet. Why do you think money is such a taboo subject in the speaking business?
Well, I think there's a lot of comparisons. And so,
Mhm.
and I think you go to NSA and I'm CSP and I've been in that world and I think it's great to learn. But that's one subject I always thought that nobody wants to talk about because
Right.
it's a lot of comparison. You get paid this and I get paid that. But what's really real, and I tell this with personal trainers, most personal trainers don't stay in the world very long because they can't make a living. And it's no different than speakers. They might have a great message, but they didn't really know how to build their business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. We were talking about this before we went on the air here, and just how when you're really doing your job, when you're on the stage, you got the mic around your neck, and you're, you know, jumping and moving. That's the glamorous part that everybody sees. They don't see us sitting around waiting for delayed flights, canceled reservations, missed birthday parties. They don't see that part.
Right.
But and yet it certainly looks glamorous. When you hear somebody says to you, "I want to be a professional speaker," what do you think? Where do you think their expectations are that aren't lining up with reality?
Well, I've heard this many times. People will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, I want to make $500,000 and I want to do 50 events a year and pay $10,000 each." That's what I want. Okay. Well, how are you going to get there? What do you get currently getting paid? The list goes on. So, and I always tell this, and I don't know about you, but there was a whole lot of presentations I did for free. And so are you willing to do a lot of stuff for free to build your and I remember I'm at this executive coaching conference and this woman invited me to come to it and I wasn't a coach at the time, but I wanted, she said, "Come on." So I went there and then you pick somebody out of the audience and you had to say what would be a crazy number you would charge for coaching, or in my world, it was speaking. And I remember this at the time. I'm charging $500 a talk, speaking around our community. And I thought if I could make $5,000 a presentation, that'd be unbelievable. So at the beginning, I had to change my belief, like what is possible? And as time went on, I realized, okay, if I turn this into a business, what do you charge? How many events can you do? You're a multi-million miler. I'm a multi-million miler on Delta. What does it really take? And in the world I was in at the time, my kids were out of the house, so it was a perfect timing for me. I didn't have the little kids at home. I look at my son and my daughter are both in our business now, and they can't be on the road I mean, they can, but they choose not to. So anyway, so that's what I think a lot of times people think that, hey, I want to be like Rob or I want to be like whoever up on stage and making this much money, picked up in the car, fancy hotel. That could be part of the equation, but that's not how you get there.
No. And to answer your question, I rarely, unless it's a charity, did or do presentations free. But I negotiate and I bundle, and I think that's a part of the piece that some people miss, which is, listen, if you want me to come out to the peak and speak, this is what it's going to be. Uh, but just because you don't want it to be that doesn't necessarily make me change my rates. I'm almost like an artist. What do I tell the other people who bought these paintings? But give me a
Right.
reason to negotiate. In other words, throw three at me. Now we have a reason to negotiate. Maybe we tie in some virtual coaching sessions or do a little bit of consulting work on the side. I'm almost begging my client, I'd love to be able to drop this bright a little bit for you. Just give me a reason to do it other than you'd like to. And that's the tricky part. There's a lot of negotiation involved.
Well, I think that's gold, what you just said there. At the beginning, as a presenter, most of the people listening to you or watching your Whisper podcast are more of seasoned. So, but at the same time, how do you begin? You begin any way you can. You're hungry, you'll do whatever. As time goes on, it's not negotiable anymore. It's negotiable about how you maybe deliver. I might give you this, and you want to bundle whatever. But it's an interesting as you want to start building your business, you have to kind of stick to this is my value. And if they're not valuing it, it's probably not a good client anyway. So you're exactly right. I will negotiate with them, but I'm not gonna go out. I'm out of Michigan, you're out of, I think, Maryland.
Yeah,
Wherever you are, I'm not gonna go to the other side of the country for X. It's not gonna happen.
right.
As you dig your heels in a little bit more, then they're gonna say, well, wait a minute. But I gotta tell you, I'm gonna guarantee you're gonna get great evaluations. You're gonna get great feedback. I'm gonna come early. I'm gonna stay late. It's not just in and out. That's the value you're basically throwing at them.
Yeah. As a sales trainer, and no one's ever taken me up on this, Pat. When had clients push back, I've said, listen, how about we do this? Don't pay me a penny. Just pick up my travel. But I want a percentage of the income that these guys and these men and women make after I do the program. I'll take 5%. That way you don't have to pay me anything. I'll
No,
just bet on me today.
I'm
And
gonna,
I've never had a taker.
nope. Why would they? There's no way they're gonna lose. So
Shh,
So,
shh,
so
shh.
that's exactly right. And
Yeah,
again, at our stages in our careers, I want to work with people who want to work with me. I'm not selling you anything.
Right.
You've already seen me. That's how. And again, I love what you say before in some of your podcasts that you're always selling from stage.
Right.
You don't have to sell on stage what most people think about, but they want that. I was at an MIT conference, and here I am, this exercise health guy. Why would you want to bring me to the top CFO conference in the world, top 400? And this guy from UBS brought me in, and he just says, I got to tell you, this guy's going to light up the room, and he's going to get people to think about capacity. And the greatest value in any organization is people, and the greatest asset of people is their health.
Right.
This is what this guy's going to talk about, and he's going to do it in 30 minutes. Out of that presentation, I had so much stinking business from these Fortune 500 companies, and it really hit me. I wasn't selling anything. I was selling what you talk about is the value of this content, and they value their people. Then what are they doing for their people? That's my kind of my hook.
Yeah.
And so right away, the audience didn't guess like, oh, this guy's going to tell me what to eat or not to eat or how to exercise. He's bringing it right front and center. You talk a lot about this. Is like, what's my value proposition to my audience? Not about me. What about the audience? And instantly, I had the room. I came out and said, we're going to talk about intentional rest today.
Right.
You could
Right.
hear it.
Right. And when we met in front of a sales team. So here's a
Right.
guy Chris who's
Hey,
not telling them how to sell. This is I'm not going
let's
over
hear it.
objection handling today. I'm going to tell you how to keep your eyes open at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and be sharp for that client.
Right.
And that's, I think, where we came in. And I can tell you right now, in the early 90s, value added was defined as Knicks tickets on the floor.
Right.
That's how I'm
Right.
going to add value. And a new wave of professional speakers and concepts came through that said, no, we're actually going to help you with your business. We're going to make you more successful. That's the value we plan on offering. So when you just said, selling on stage, I just want to be clear with people because ironically, I don't sell books on stage. I won't
Oh,
sell them off stage. I'm
no.
not here to hawk books and
Right.
trinkets and
Right.
tuna sandwiches. I'm here to make you more successful. And
Right.
when we do that and keep our focus there, like you said, you've got prospects out in that audience. They just don't have signs on their head. That's all. Just take care of what you can take care of. And that's the value you're driving.
And one of the things I was thinking about talking to you today, I think one
Hmm.
thing as speakers, you have to be ready. I remember at the beginning of my career, I wanted to get into some of these big groups. And I remember having a coach, and he said, "You're not ready. Be careful whose door you knock on, because if they say yes and you don't have what you have, you're not going to get another chance." And so that was really good advice to me. It's like I wasn't ready. Like I started doing work with AT&T in 2014. If I would have done that in 2008, there's no way. So that's where I think also as you're marketing and building your business, who are you going after? Are you there? Do you have the coaching, like listening to your podcast and the books and we talked about Patricia Fripp. I was listening to her, and it's all that. And then as you are ready for that opportunity, you're ready for it. And the way I got AT&T is I was speaking in New York in to a Merrill Lynch event, and one of the guys from AT&T was in my audience
Hmm.
selling from, and he goes, I got to hook you up with AT&T. We have these big conferences all over the world, and that's kind of how we're talking about selling from stage.
Right. Exactly. And I refer to it as ring work, like a boxer. We need ring work. And
Absolutely.
you want to be ready for that big fight. You don't just go into the championship fight. Well, you get one shot in front of that speakers bureau. You may get one shot in front of AT&T. And and I'm not put I look, I was an in-house trainer for Xerox and CSC. I'm never going to put trainers down, but we're not talking about tens on an evaluation now. We're
Right.
talking about people leaning back in their chair and saying, I've never heard anything like that in my life.
Right.
I've never seen anything like that. That's how an AT&T walks up to you, gets introduced to you.
Yeah, I mean,
And
the
yeah.
first time I did at AT&T, they did a American Audition Idol type of, vetting for the speakers. And and I came in there, I was really nervous. You only have 20 people. They got their arms crossed. They're not engaging. They're evaluating you, and they picked me. And so they picked me, and my first event was in charge of leadership. This is in charge of AT&T CFOs and CEOs and everything else. And over to my left was Colin Powell. And I got to tell you, if this would have been 5, 6 years, 10 years earlier, I would have been nervous out of my mind. But I wasn't. I was excited to share what I had with Colin Powell. So that's where I think as you're marketing your business, do a lot of that stuff that you kind of think you're, like I'm really good, but how do I get to be great?
Yeah.
And then I'm ready to roll. And then I'm setting up my marketing and selling from stage, and that will naturally happen. But I think that's a big part that a lot, I was never taught that. I just kind of fell into it. But I remember that advice the guy says, he goes, you got great energy, you have great stories. As you said about timing, your stories, you don't really have a point to them. They're just funny stories. So as I learned the speaking profession and learned how to deliver and pause and, as you crafted your content, made it engaging, then I was ready to market it to, the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that ring work we're talking about. Here I am, a sales trainer, a sales guy writing sales books, blah, blah, blah. And yet, I don't think the biggest obstacle for particularly new speakers is the sales side of this. I think it's the marketing side of this. And when people ask, well, aren't they the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. I always define it as marketing is how you bring somebody to the table. Sales is what happens when you pull out the chair and they sit down.
Right.
Most people, I don't. If somebody walked up to me and said, "I'm trying to get my bearings in this business. I got more prospects. I know what to do with. I'm not closing them. Come see me." But most that I see don't have enough prospects. They don't have enough in that sales funnel to work with. So let's talk marketing for a second. Where do you think speakers should be hunting for work? Because everybody's out there hunting right now.
Yeah, so when I started out in the association market, and I started speaking at the Dental Association. I started speaking at the Court Reporters Association, all these associations because they have to do continuing education credits. They have to.
Mhm.
So one thing led to another. If you, like, for example, I use Michigan, I did these dental association dental hygienists, and they have six of them around the state. Well, if you go to do one, they're going to hire you to do all of them. And then if they know people, then you're going to go do Minnesota and you're going to go do, Ohio or wherever in the Midwest. And the next thing you know, it's just blowing up. I'm lining these all up. So that's kind of how I began. And then, as you know, many of those people are affiliated with maybe their husbands or wives, or and you heard this guy speak today. And then one thing led to another. And so that's where I started. And then I started doing lots of work in the financial services arena. And once I started doing that, they had a lot of, outreach because many of those financial advisors are dealing with corporations and the list goes on. So I didn't even know it at the time, but that's kind of how it began. And
Yeah.
then I started branching off, I did Costco and AT&T and T and Comcast and the list goes on. But once you start building that out and you have people that you spoke at who? Yeah, I did that. Okay, talk to, that's then you start putting them together and you're starting to market it. And now they start thinking, well, maybe I need to bring something in for my people
Yeah.
and help them.
Yeah. I love the financial industry. Like you, I've spent most of my career there. I like them because they typically have pretty deep budgets, so that they particularly on the sales side of these things. But I'm going to throw an idea back at you because I think this hunting is the toughest part. One of the biggest breaks that ever happened to me, and it was early on, was as we were sort of reforming and redefining what value add was. One of the financial institutions came up and said, "You know what? We'd like you to speak to our clients. We want to use you as our personal value add." And it doesn't have to be the financial industry. What I'm suggesting that people consider, it's not going to be easy, but it's the unicorn. If you can find it, it's really going to pay dividends.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
a company that you not only work with, but that works with other companies and are trying to get them to work with them and see if there's an opportunity where you might be a value add opportunity for them. It's like a love triangle. Everybody's happy in that triangle.
Well, I think you're hitting it right there. So now your marketing arm is different. Like I'll use, for example, financial services. A big part of where we began is fund managers. And so the Nationwides of the world, Columbia Threadneedles, all of those, we got really amazing relationships. Oh, by the way, we did the big wirehouses. And so then they knew, like, hey, can I bring this guy in? You know, yeah, I wanted him to be part of that co-sponsorship. And then we do a lot of client events for the wirehouses, like a Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or Raymond James or whatever. And so now they want to they see me at this national sales conference or whatever it is. And then they said, gosh, that'd be a great idea to bring in for our teams, but also our customers, our clients. So you're exactly right. Then it has multiple arms to it and fingers, and that's now you're starting to go, okay. Because I truly believe the same thing you're saying is the marketing is the heart. How do you get them to the table? Once I sit down with you, you're
Right.
that I'll close you because I'm going to share with you like your greatest asset is your people, and I'm going to help your people to become their best. Okay, I'm interested. So, but yeah, finding that, and a lot of times you just have to kind of figure it out as you go. What what resonates, who resonates with who, and what conferences, looking online, what are some of the conferences out there? And then what are the small ones? What are the regional ones? And then what are some of the big kahunas?
Right.
So as I spoke in the dental world a long time ago, then I went to the national conference, and then that even blew it up. So
Mhm.
once you get to those, big things, the marketing starts to really take off. But and more you speak, as you know, the more you speak.
Yeah. It's interesting. And that's the catch 22, by the way, because everybody, I always wanted 1.2 gigs a week. That'd be about perfect for me. Doesn't work that way. And the more often I'm out, the more often I'm booked.
Right.
But we got a lot of speakers that might have families at home
Right.
and other responsibilities. It's a tough life to keep in balance. Getting to the part that we were talking about there, the reason why I like that value add and trying to get in with a company is now you're utilizing their sales force to
Mhm.
basically sell your services.
Right.
So, but let's talk about let's swing over to pricing. Don't run, but because it trips up a lot of people, and it's the speakers bureaus. I don't know if you ever work with the speakers bureaus, but the speakers bureaus are won't even touch a speaker at under 10, and they don't even like them at 10,000. But how does a speaker know if their price is appropriate? What advice would you give them to establishing a price for themselves?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to be in the boxing ring and do some reps.
Hmm.
So you get comfortable of your not only your content, your delivery, you get really good at that. And as you know, you start watching other speakers and you start looking around. Like the speaker bureaus are a good place to look around just to see what pricing is and so forth. We don't do a whole lot with speaker bureaus. As you mentioned, they want to sell the 25 to 40 to $100,000 speaker. And so, that might be a great avenue for some speakers, but I don't think it's a great place. I always say the speaker bureaus come crawling or come talking to you when you're super busy already.
Right, right.
So I don't think it's a great place to start for a lot of people, depending on unless you're a celebrity or so forth. But I think the pricing really gets out there. It's like, what is in my community? If you charge, and again, they don't know what you do, but we're charging $3,500 to $5,000 in our community. But if you get me to go to California, I'm going to charge 12,500 to 15,000. I'm not batting an eye on that. That's not negotiable. Now, I might do multiple things for that 15 to 20,000 or whatever you decide to work with. It might be a breakout, it might be a morning workout, it might be a follow-up webinar, whatever it might be. But that's kind of where you begin. But I think it depends on whether you want to speak more locally. Do you want to do some virtual? Our virtual presentations are 3,500. Our keynotes are 12,500 on up, depending on what we do. So you have that, and then as you mentioned earlier, you kind of bundle some things together so it makes it worthwhile for them. But locally, if that's where you're at, just think about what is in your community. And now I always say the same thing. If I get done doing an event, and again, it's not always about big part of what we do is we want to help. And so a big part of that, but at the same time, we need to make a living. So am I happy? And I've done this many times where I'm not happy after the event. They got my price down. I'm not happy with it, and I wish I would have done it. I don't do that anymore. So, and haven't done that in a long time. But at some point in time, I was like hungry. "Yeah, can you come and do this, in Topeka, Kansas for $2,500?" Oh yeah, I'll do that. And by the time I'm gone 3 days, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I think that's where speakers get stuck because they don't have enough the value proposition. They don't have enough value to what they're doing. If I have to go out of the house, if you're flying across the country, it's not a 1 day event.
Right.
It's multiple days. So in that
Right.
multiple days, if they're going to get me, I was telling them if I have to get on a plane, this is what it's going to cost, but this is the value I could add. So I think that's where speakers go wrong, especially at the beginning, is they're undervaluing. And you've heard this before. You're going to charge me that much money for 1 hour. It's not 1 hour. It's 23 years. It's 40 years. It's this. No, it's the impact we're going to make. This is where we're going to move.
Right. Right.
So anyway, there's a lot to that, but I think pricing is what we don't talk enough about. Get a price, see how it shakes out. But if you have to leave on a plane, then it's going to be you need to have a price it makes sense.
Right. Well, first, we're different in a few ways. This is interesting to me. First of all, for me, I don't change my price based on how far I'm flying.
No, I
Uh,
don't either. I don't
okay.
choose that.
So,
I'm
all
just
right.
saying if I do
Yeah.
get on a plane.
All right. So, but if you mean if you can drive it, it's one price. If you
No,
fly it, it's
no,
another.
no, no. I'm just saying I'm making that point is that if I have to go, if it's, a block away from my house, that probably is going to be a
Sure.
different price.
Sure. Okay, I got you. Okay. And I think I remember I was selling a house one time and we set a price and the realtor kept saying the same thing. Very good realtor, by the way. Kept saying that we don't really have to be all that concerned because the market is going to speak. The market will tell us what this house is worth. So you can put that price wherever you want.
Sure.
We'll figure the market will answer. And I
Right.
think that's the point you're making. I just want to
Yep.
reinforce it
Yep.
that love the idea of maybe benchmarking. In other words, let's find somebody that looks a lot like Chris, okay? Kind of in that space, roughly, just so we have an idea where we're going to start that number. And we go from there, but it's tough. Pricing does trip up a lot of people, and one of the things I tell people who are early on is you almost have to practice in a mirror. And I don't do a whole lot of mirror stuff. I don't believe in giving presentations to a mirror. I think that's the biggest nonsense. Mirrors don't ask questions, they don't talk. Forget that. But where a mirror is good is when somebody asks you what your price is, you can't say hamana, 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 hamana. You got to be able to roll that number right out. 12.5 for one day, 16.2 for the second day, 1.5 for virtual. Just you have to practice those numbers and say them like you mean it because if there's some shake in your voice, uh, that's going to cost you money.
Well, I can't say that enough because I've done that. I made that mistake. So as time goes on, you have to have some parameters because you're going to have other customers and they do talk. And so this is what it is. But this is the value I'm going to bring. Now, if you want to bundle it, like we had an event, not too long ago, they wanted to bundle 10 events. Okay, yeah, 10 events. Let's talk about that. This is your
Right.
price. We'll bundle this price. But you're right. You need to have that. This is what we charge. You're not negotiating. You can negotiate how we bundle it, but we're not really not negotiating the price.
Right. And let's we're coming down the home stretch, but I want people to hear this because I want to get it clear. Once you set a price, you can be mad at you. You can be, but never be mad at the client. Don't be mad at, don't, it's just you. I've done the same thing. I've gone, this mythical Topeka is on the map today, but I've gone to mythical Topeka for X number
Right.
and the job was a little bit more, and I'm a little bit annoyed, but never at my client. I don't care. Once we have a number, whether it's $100
It
or
doesn't matter.
$50,000, you're
Right.
getting everything Chris and Rob have in the tank. That number's completely irrelevant to us.
Yeah.
And the only person I might be annoyed at will be me on the flight home going, let's not do that again. Enough
Yeah,
of
and
that.
and you learn. I've done events, you've done events where the price probably wasn't exactly what you wanted, and you did such a great job that they call you in 5 years and they want you to come back, and now they know the value, and there's just is what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we've all done that. I think we all will do that, but at some point in time, not don't bat an eye. This is what it is. This is the value I bring. And I always say too, you'll be talking to me for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Because if you send, and I give my email out, I do all sorts of crazy stuff, but you will not be disappointed that I didn't follow up. And one last thing about pricing, you've been in the same stages with certain presenters. You kind of know what they charge. And then, as you mentioned before, your evaluations come back and your evaluations are much better. And I've had that with different organizations. They share with me the evaluations, and I know what the other presenters got. They probably shouldn't have shared it with me. And those presenters are making more. And then it really creates that, okay, if they're charging that, I'm not saying we need to charge the same, but we're in the ballpark. And we're in the ballpark that we probably should probably up our fees. But the
Yeah.
market will tell you. The market
Yeah.
will tell you.
Let's one more thing on pricing, and I'll bring this in for a landing. And I may be answering my question because I'm not sure if you do this, but we're talking keynotes, bang, there's your flat fee, there's your number. Okay. Yes, if you want me around, we'll bundle something together. But do you do workshops, half day, full day workshops, where we typically have a much smaller crowd? And now we're tasting those nutritional products of yours.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, do you do workshops to you?
Yes.
Okay. B, um, how do you price those workshops?
Well, I bundle it as a big. So I tell them, so when now we're at the table,
Yeah.
what do you want your conference to look like? Let's make this conference very engaging and unique. We're going to do a morning workout session, and this is what it's going to look like. It's not a boot camp. It's not killing people. This is what we're talking about. Restorative movements, they're in. We're also going to do a beverage bar. So we do beverage bars. We help them design snacking. So we also will do the keynote, and we do put me at the beginning of your conference because I'm going to get them all jacked up. But then I'm going to be around, and we're going to do a breakout session the next day. We're going to do two of them, and every one of them they're always just completely packed because now they know what they're going to get. So that's kind of what, and then they pare it down or tell me what that looks like.
Got it. Yeah.
So, and I'll give them examples of what we've done with other groups, and they're like, okay, I want that. What is that price? So now we just start going, okay, this is, now you got the big kahuna. And they also do retreats. So retreats now, I'm coming to you, or I'm coming. Now they want to go, okay, what would it take you to come in for 2 days with our leadership team of 15? What would that look like? And so now they're getting interested. And that doesn't usually happen. The retreat doesn't happen until after we do an event.
Right.
So, but we give them the services that we can provide to help them.
Got it. Yeah. And I at that Invesco conference that we met at, I saw some of that from you, and I thought I was almost jealous because I'm in the trenches throwing out sales tactics. This guy, everybody's eating and drinking with Chris. They're snacking, they're drinking, they're socializing. There was a lot of fun going on at your area, and I wasn't jealous, but I was thinking, ooh, that's a nice touch there. So I've seen you in action, but let me tell you where I was going, because I want to get this point out, and so I'll throw it to you and get your feedback for. And I was going to say meat and potatoes, but now we're on food again. For just a program that has a 1 day delivery, where in a keynote we typically say put in 10 people, put in 1,000 people. Here's your number for pricing. With a workshop, we never want to do that. We never want to say, oh, put in as many as you want. No, a workshop is typically standard in the business, 20 people. You can flump it up a little bit on one side or the other, but about 20. But I want people, and so let's say you charge $20,000 for that workshop of 2 days. Fine. I'm just preparing everyone who's listening for what's coming, which is I got two more people. Can we put two more in? Sure, I guess so. We lost a couple people. Now we're at 18. So does the price change? We're now no longer $1,000 a person. Flat fee those workshops, number one. We don't, if somebody couldn't make it in, if there was a storm, this is what it costs to have Chris for 2 days. And number two, which I feel very comfortable with, it's just this is the Jollis system. I'm sharing it with you today. If I get 22, it's just a per head count over 20. So if it's a $20,000 workshop, it's $22,000 if somebody wants to put 22 people in. It's not personal. You don't have to get upset because you're going to be kicking yourself when you've got 28 people in there and you've been paid for a 1 day workshop. Now you got 30 people in there. That's a workshop and a half, really. If you per head that charge over 20 and you do 30 people, do the math. You'll be paid as if you've delivered a workshop and a half, which is fair compensation. So that's just one person's approach, and it's logical. I've never had a client go, I don't understand, or I don't think that's fair. I'm giving him the least expensive per head charge. That's all we'll do from then on top of it.
Yeah, again, I think you start learning that when you're looking at your business, but you want to have an outline. I always start like reverse engineer. What do you want it to look like?
Right,
At the end of your year, we look at vision and how much revenue do we want to bring in from speaking?
right.
And then we reverse engineer as what kind of conferences are we going after? What kind of client events are we doing? What's local? What's virtual? But we're putting that out there, and then that allows us a runway of like, okay, so let's target these conferences. We need to do 10 big conferences a year.
Right.
We need to do this, we do this, and then how are we going to get there? But I think sometimes as speakers, when I've met with them, talked to them like you, they haven't really thought that deep of what they want it to look like. Can your business survive if you're only bringing in $100,000 in speaking? Well, if it's just you, probably. But if you start building a team, do you have who's selling you, how you doing it, what it looks like. We had to bring in X dollars a year to run the beast. And so once the beast is, eaten, then you can kind of see how we're going. But I think that's where people fall flat is like if you're charging $1,500 a presentation, you're doing 100 a year, you're not going to
Yeah.
be in business any for land,
And you may very well be having a little bit of dysfunction at home. That's a lot of road work.
That's a lot of road work.
Yeah, it is. I'll finish with that little tale. Once I set my workshop numbers that way, I won't name who, I won't name when, but I had a company come to me and say, "Okay, we're fine with that. We only got you for 2 days. We want 2 1 day workshops. We're going to put 90 people in each workshop." I did cross train managers. That's how we because every now and then a client is going to scratch their head and go, I don't get it. You said you could only do 20. Now magically you can do 90. Well, I either fly more trainers to cover. I don't need anyone to speak for me. I need them for small
Sure.
group exercises, case studies, role plays. But we can train that organization, have them hit the ground running. But that was 2 days, 90 people in there a day. You do the math. That was my two best days in my career, quite frankly, profit wise. And the client was thrilled because they got 180 people through the system in 2 days. That's what they wanted. That's what they needed. And they had a fair, rational way of seeing how I arrived at the number of how we were going to do that.
Well, plus it's gold for them and you because they're all getting there to that spot.
Right.
So why would again, if you're not selling it that way, since they're all coming here, I could do X, and
Hmm.
that's what it could look like. So
Yep.
sometimes you have to kind of open their eyes up, like, oh, you do a morning exercise session? Yeah, and by the way, I do an afternoon restore session. What's that look like?
Right.
Well, after everybody's exhausted from a session before they go to do cocktails and, dinner or whatever, I'm going to do a restore session at 4:30 to make basically 45 minutes, and I'm going to relax them. I'm going
Right.
to have them work on their breath work. And I got to tell you, it's always the most highly rated of all our sessions. But if you don't throw that out there, like you're saying, I'm going to do this workshop, they're all there. It's your best day of your career. That's now I'm so excited because I'm not only making a huge impact, but it's good business for you and it's good business for them. It's a
Right.
win-win. Now I have
That's
a
the idea.
template to move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. And that's the big point I wanted to make on pricing. Make it logical. Have a client look at it and go, that makes sense. And so we have to sort of practice that along. All right. I've kept you too long. Let's finish with one last question for you. Someone listening right now wants to grow or survive in this business, and they've heard a bunch of ideas. What's What's one business move you think they should focus on first? It's tough because it's like throwing a party. Do we do the music? Do we do the lighting? Do we do the food? I know where I'm going, but what would you have them focus on first?
Well, you have to be good on stage. You have to be not only good on stage, you have to be great on stage.
Hmm.
And so, what's your content like? What are your stories? What's your pausing? How you move on stage? I never knew any of this stuff. And then as time goes on, you watch that's your calling card. Once you get really good with your content and your presentation skills and all that, I can't say that enough. I say this to my kids all the time. You can constantly get better. And as you get better and sharpen it up and your language and everything you do, you can constantly get better. As you get better, people they'll stop eating and start listening and like, who is this person?
Right. Yeah.
Then then you have a business. I
Yeah.
think people try to reverse engineer it. They get the smoke in the mirror. And I've seen this. I've seen great marketing videos. They come up. I'm having an interview with Oprah. You see them on stage. Next thing you know, everybody's got their phone underneath the table. No, that they're not going to call you back. It might be good to that person came in and they had a great marketing video, but if you want to have legs to your business like you do, I saw you, that's going to keep you growing and thriving. Because I think a lot of speakers can do okay for a year or two. Can they have a 10-year, 15-year, you know, 30-year?
33 years, Chris,
3
33
years. Right.
years.
So to me, I look at that, I'm like, I just did an event in December and they're like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 68. Man, you got a lot of energy. I want what you want. So, but that took a long time, but that's where I would begin. I'd
Got it.
begin with you and your content and your delivery. And from there, you can start marketing it and pricing it. And
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. We can always get better. Got to work on those delivery. Got to make people, it's got to be have that wow factor. How do people get a hold of you, Chris?
it's just Chris Johnson at On Target Living. That's the name of our company, On Target Living. And my son runs our company now. His name is Matt. And my daughter Kristen, they're twins, and she's one of our presenters. So that's our business. And what you will know is that we'll respond to you. You can actually talk to somebody on our team. So that which is always fun.
Yeah, listen. I've seen this guy in action. He's the real deal. By really, you sharpened me up during that meeting, as I recall. I was thinking, boy, I gotta make sure I'm bringing the big guns today. Pleasure having you on. Chris and I met some years ago. We did a podcast together, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But it's great to have you on the show. Just thrilled to hear from you, and I'm always learning from you, and I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
We'll keep changing lives, my friend. You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. For more resources and to connect with Rob, visit thepresentationwhisperer.com.